Back in the day, I'd hear Nirvana come up on my playlist, and I'd think, this is one of the greatest bands of all time. Nowadays, I hear Nirvana come on, and I think, this is one of the greatest bands of all time. And I designed official merch for them. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Duran with DuranSupply.com, and I'm here to help you design smarter, not harder. So how did I design official merch for the legendary Nirvana? I'm going to take you layer by layer through the actual Photoshop files in a bit, but just to contextualize this, let me take you back to 2 years ago, June 2023, just a few days before my birthday, and I'm about to get the best gift ever. One of the art directors from a merch company reached out to me and they said this: I was wondering if you have time over the next week to work on a Nirvana project for us. Are you interested in working on a handful of designs? You know what? How did my schedule just free up? They could have given me 2 hours for this project and I would have said yes. But I actually had a decent amount of time, 10 days, and the due date was my birthday. Hell yeah. She said, can I make a handful of designs? I'll make more than a handful. So the next 10 days of my life were strictly devoted to this project. Let's go over some of the inspiration and the guidelines that they sent over. Funny enough, you'd expect me, a designer with a pretty dark and convoluted grungy style, to make some really intricate grungy designs for Nirvana, the grunge band. But surprisingly, for a lot of the bigger names in music, even these grunge bands or these rock bands, their merch generally falls on the simpler and brighter side. And that's by design because that stuff just sells better, or at least that's what I'm told. As you can see here, this is some of their best-selling art that I was to take inspiration from. So generally, you can see it's pretty simple, evergreen designs. And so this is kind of the style that I have to go for, which I wasn't mad at because it's a design muscle that I honestly need to strengthen. I think it's easier to make something look good when you can slap on a whole bunch of grunge texture and, cool whatever grungy elements. And I think it's hard to do more with less. They also provided me with some other inspiration that gave me a little more leeway to explore, like these really cool vintage tees or old tour posters. But generally, the goal was to keep things simple and also provide options that are a little bit out of the box, just in case. You're of course also pretty limited in terms of what kind of photos and assets you can use of the band, depending on if the record label or the merch company has them licensed to use, or what colors or imagery or effects you can and cannot use. So all of that has to be taken into account as well. For example, not being redundant with their logos, not using excessive grunge, making sure all the band members carry the same visual weight in the design. You don't want to specialize, one of the band members. So things like that. And they wanted a few designs for their MTV Unplugged anniversary, a few for the Bleach album anniversary, and a few evergreen designs for In Utero or just logo focused designs. I ended up coming up with a lot of designs. As I said, I was happy to do more than a handful. I did around 20 designs in total, and here's what my file accidentally looked like at the end with all the designs laid out on top of each other. It actually looks pretty cool. I wish I could put this on a t-shirt. But out of those 20 designs, none of them got approved in the first year after submitting that project. Sometimes you submit designs and you don't hear back for months. In this case, even a year. So you can imagine how on my toes I was that entire year. And eventually I just kind of started to lose hope. I was like, I had this one great opportunity to design for Nirvana. I sold the bag, But these merch operations are very large scale, and sometimes these things just take a long time. So finally, the Lord answered my prayers and I got the best email of my life. 4 of my designs were approved and were set to be printed for retail. And later on, a few more got approved as well. So I think in total, I've gotten about 8 or so designs approved officially for Nirvana, and I couldn't be happier about that. So now let's head into Photoshop and go over some of the designs that have been released. Let's start with this In Utero design. And by the way, this project file is 2 years old now, so I don't remember everything I did, but we're gonna go through all my layers and break it down layer by layer. So let's go ahead and open up the group that I have for this design. I'm gonna turn everything off and we're gonna pretty much rebuild this layer by layer. So if I remember correctly, I started off with the In Utero album cover and I had to crop out the subject here, which I might have painstakingly done using the pen tool, or maybe I did it with Photoshop Select Subject feature. I don't remember, but either way, I got this all masked out, just our subject here. And so from this base, I wanted to frame our subject with a wreath of leaves. So I have these in some groups here. Let's open up this green leaves group and see what we got going on. So as you can see, I just pretty much placed a bunch of leaves in here, some PNGs, and I'm gonna turn these all off. We'll go one by one. I'm pretty sure I got these from Fuller Mo's, I think it's called his Vintage Flowers and Fruit kit on his site. It's GFX World now, so shout out to Fuller Mo, shout out to GFX World for this pack. Basically, it's full of a bunch of vintage style illustrated leaves and flowers and fruit. So I dragged a ton of those in here and I just started placing them behind the subject, and I actually have a ton of adjustments going on top, which I'll get to in a second. So for now, I'll turn those off. So yeah, this was just a PNG of some flowers that I really like, the little leaf arrangement down here. And I thought it kind of followed the contours of the wings here. So I placed it like that, and then I just used a layer mask to isolate only these parts of the leaves. And then I just duplicated that onto the other side. And we do have a bit of an issue here, but I think I just go over it later with some other leaves. So then I just kept dragging on some more leaves. Here we go. So now it's covering up that little cut off part. So again, this is just another PNG from that kit. So again, shout out Fuller Mo, shout out GFX World. So yeah, I'm just dragging these leaves into places I think fit nice. Again, I'm trying to sort of follow the contour of the wings on our subject here, and then just mask it using layer mask to just put that where I want it. And again, I duplicated that over to the other side. And then finally on top of that, I added these two leaves here, which was this PNG that I masked to just these two top leaves because I thought that looked really nice. Again, following the contour, that little bulge here at the top of the wing. I thought that blended perfectly with the leaves, and it was just perfect. But the problem was that all of these leaves obviously kind of have different variations in color. So I used these adjustments up here to kind of make them all the same green. So the first adjustment here is just a hue saturation adjustment layer with the colorized check. And this is a great little feature that I don't know if a lot of people know about, but I use it all the time. It is the hue and saturation layer with the colorized checked. Very easy way to recolor something. So I just made these a nice deep green. And then again up here, I don't know what this is doing. Okay, that's doing nothing. And then I have these levels. I don't know if that's doing anything at all. I don't know why that's there. And then I have another hue and saturation up here, which is pretty much just desaturating these leaves to get them just a little bit more of a moody look. And then I did the same thing with some orange leaves. And these I believe I recolored to be orange as well. So I'll turn those off for now, and you can see the original arrangement I had down here for just these leaves and these flowers actually. So I put these PNGs down here to give this whole thing some body and just give some more variation. Like up here I had that only on the left side, which I thought looked nice. And then obviously I didn't want this to clash too much with the green leaves because right now, you know, without the colors being different, it just looks like a mess. So I did the same exact setup that I had down there, except this time I colorized it as a deep sort of melt orange, which I thought looked really good and blended with the colors of our subject here real nice. And then on top of that, I think I just have a levels adjustment layer to brighten up these parts of the leaves. And I really needed some separation between the subject and the leaves because it kind of still looks like a mess. So I believe I just added some glow or some sort of a drop shadow behind the subject. So here I think I just painted in with a soft brush a little bit of white behind the subject. So that's what this layer is. And then I also added a drop shadow, a few drop shadows actually to the actual subject here to really get that glow to be prominent and just really separate it from the leaves. So this is just a few drop shadows. I'll open that up. We have a white drop shadow, a orange drop shadow, and then a blue drop shadow, which I guess is kind of combining to make a purplish drop shadow. So not sure my thought process there, but looks good to me. And then I thought it'd be really cool if the leaves also sort of intertwined with the subject to have some more interplay between the elements. So I brought some of those PNGs on top, specifically these ones down here. And I just duplicated them on top of the subject and masked it out so it's only covering the bottom part of the wings here. And so that just kind of immerses the subject more with the background. And this is pretty much, you know, the main sort of meat and potatoes of this design. The only thing left after this is to fix the color and add some logo and type. So let's go over the color adjustments that I did here. So I'll turn those on really quick, and you can see that it makes quite a difference on the design, and it really does bring everything together. I usually make sure to have any color adjustments just on top of everything while I'm working so that I can sort of lock in a cohesive feel. So for these color adjustments, I just used two selective color adjustment layers. I'll go one by one here. So the first one here, it looks like it's just sort of bringing in some contrast and exposing or blowing out those whites a little bit more so the drop shadow has a little bit more body to it. So it's actually kind of just flattening this against the background. and making it a little bit more flush, and while also adding some contrast to the actual subject, which I thought the deep reds looked really nice here. So the color is starting to come together now, and then on top of that, I added this selective color adjustment, which is pretty much just blowing out the midtones quite a bit to get more of like a vintage faded feel, which I really like. And it looks like it's also sort of penetrating those reds and making them a bit more orange here, and it's kind of lifting those blacks a little bit. So it ends up with a really nice sort of old print vintage feel. And all this stuff is really simple. This is these are just stock adjustments, obviously in Photoshop. This is one of my favorite adjustment layers to use, is the selective color. And what I'll do is I'll just go one by one in all of these categories and just adjust it until it looks good. And obviously I'll pick out the colors that are most prominent in the designs. So for the red, for example, if I go to the reds here, I have some adjustments made to make this a little bit more orange and a tiny bit more magenta. And then also I really wanted to blow out the midtones, which is a look that I really like, kind of gives it that vintage print feel. So I just go into the midtones here, or the neutrals, and just blow those out with the black slider here. And so then on top of this, all that was left was the little type lockup down here, which I just, sort of wrote out in Utero, and in that little space there, I added that cheeky little Smiley Nirvana logo. So pretty nice, simple lockup. The font I'm using here is Arial Black. Arial, not Helvetica. Unusual of me. And then of course we got the iconic Nirvana logo all the way up here. I may have stretched it a bit now that I'm looking at it. I'm not sure. Maybe I am sure. It does look pretty stretched. I don't know. So I probably did stretch it a little bit just so it takes up more room here. And yeah, this is just the logo with a gradient overlay on it and some other stuff. Let me go into this. So I actually did this sort of unconventionally. I'm not exactly sure why I did that, but the original, I have 2 copies of it. The one down here is just a white to red gradient overlay, or maybe that's an inner shadow that's doing that. Yeah, so the text is white, and then I have these inner shadows here that are sort of building up on that and making that gradient red coming in here. And then right on top of that, I duplicated it. In this one, I think I just set all those inner shadows to green, and then I just masked that in with this group here to the bottom half of the logo. So it sort of gives the effect of a gradient, which I thought was a nice blend of the 2 main colors in this design, which is that green and the orange. So I'm including those in the logo for a holistic palette. So all the colors in this design have their companion. The green on the logo is matching the green on the leaves. The reddish orange on the subject is matching that reddish orange on the Nirvana type, and the reddish orange in these other leaves down here, or these flowers. And then we have those little moments of black or really dark gray around here that give it the depth that the design needs. And that's working side by side with this little black type lockup down here to bring a holistic and matching palette to the whole design. So this is probably my favorite design that I did out of the bunch that got approved. I have the t-shirt for this, of course. Let me go get that. They did a beautiful job on the print. Let me focus that. They did a beautiful job on the print, and the shirt is actually sort of an off-white creamish color, and it's just gorgeous. Really, really love how it came out. I'm gonna try to include a close-up of this because they really did nail the print, and it's really got that vintage feel to it. There's a bit of a misregistration in the blacks, and it just looks really good. Okay, let's move on to the Smiley logo tee, which is by far the most popular design that I did out of the bunch. It ended up at Walmart. It's at a Walmart near me. It's probably at a Walmart near you. It was a bestseller, which I'm really proud of. I've seen it a ton of times across the gram. People keep sending me, random Instagram stories or random Instagram posts where people are wearing this shirt. And I even saw, while I was playing basketball, somebody wearing this shirt. And that's actually how I found out that it finally went to print, because it takes a long time for these things to actually go to print. And sometimes we don't get notification of that. So I saw someone wearing this while I was hooping. And when they finished the game, I was like, dude, where'd you get that shirt? I was like looking on my phone, the exact design that I submitted. And I was like, that is my design. So I was like, where'd you get that shirt? He said he thinks he got it at Walmart or something. So I immediately went after it and found it online, and I was stoked. I bought it immediately. And the funny part about this design is that I didn't really like it at first. It's kind of grown on me, but you know my style. I'm more of I like more complex designs. The Smiley and all, it has kind of become a cliche. Obviously, Nirvana, the brand, has kind of overshadowed Nirvana, the band, in a sense. As I'm sure everyone knows, it's not uncommon to see people wearing a Nirvana tee, especially with their iconic Smiley logo, that don't even know Nirvana. So it's just become a bit of a cliche, but this design has definitely grown on me, and it's just so awesome to see people wearing it out in public. So let's go over the exact layers I used to make this design. Let me open this folder up. So I just started with the Smiley logo down here, and I may have made it a bit thicker, but I don't quite remember. And then I just added a massive overpowering glow to this through drop shadows, which I made a quick tutorial on my Instagram a while back, but let me just bring you through that real quick. So instead of using outer glow, you can actually get a way more realistic and powerful glow just using drop shadows. So if you just duplicate the drop shadow layer a shit ton of times, increasing the size or the spread with each successive duplicate, you can create this really nice fall off for the glow. So that's what I did here. So as you can see, they're all just a white glow where I'm just messing with the spread and the size for each duplicate to create a really well built glow with a nice fall off. So that's how I got that glow. Let's see what I did up here. Smiley backing. I'm gonna open that up. Okay, here's what I did. I remember actually. So I do this all the time actually, and I created a tutorial that kind of went over this technique a little bit. If you remember that one, I'm just gonna put it up on the screen. I don't even know what I named it. I think it was Angelic Grunge. So with that glow in place, I then just took a bunch of pretty much smoky elements and just overlaid that on top of the glow. So like this smoke texture, I'm gonna show that for you here. This is most probably just a smoke texture I found on Google. I just set that to overlay and turn the opacity down a bit so that it kind of gives those smoky edges to the glow. It's a really nice look and it's a really simple way to do that. And I just did that with a few different smoke textures, and I included this. I guess this is sort of an eclipse texture in here as well. Yeah, that's what that is. So it's just an eclipse, I think. I probably just searched up eclipse on Google and threw that in here as well. And since it's a circular element, it works pretty well here. So here's where I got to. Obviously, this looks like shit right now. But eventually I got to making it look better. So on top of all that, I added this Smiley back in to sort of knock out the original Smiley and just sort of make it like it was a backing glow, like it was a backlight, so that the inside is empty, but we got these glowing, these edges around the logo. And then up here, I added a pattern, sort of a stipple pattern to this to give it some more texture. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is just a stipple pattern that I made a while back. I was just experimenting with patterns and I created this stipple pattern from God knows what. I don't know. I don't even know if it's still in my patterns library, but this is just a stipple pattern that I made. I wish I could tell you where to find it, but this was so long ago, I do not remember. So here I just have those patterns overlaid on top of the graphic here, and that's giving it some texture. I've got this levels here to sort of blow up that glow a little bit. And then I start adding some texture. So this is right here, Vintage Soft Grunge. That is a texture from, again, GFX World or Floral. I don't know which texture kit it is exactly. It's one of their grunge texture kits. But yeah, added a really nice grungy feel out of the box. And then right on top of that, I have a gradient map, which for some reason completely inverted the design. I don't know why I have it like that. I don't know what I did. Okay, I have no idea, but this completely inverted the design. And then later on, I invert it back. I don't know. I don't know why I did that. But following this, I just added some more texture. Let me hide that real quick. So I added some more texture. These are all textures from my Warren Plastisol texture kit. This is the version 1 of that kit because this was 2 years ago, but I do have a version 2 of that kit. But anyway, these are some textures from that Warren Plastisol kit, and I'm just overlaying them here on screen to really dial in that cracked vintage look. So they're really good for that. And then in here, I finally add the logo. And again, this is all like inverted right now for some reason. I don't know. We're gonna get to that. So for this logo, it looks like a gradient overlay with a stroke, inner shadow, and some drop shadows. So just to go into that real quick, we have a sort of peachy red to yellow gradient overlay on the text, which is pretty much like Nirvana's signature. You'll see that a lot on their designs. I've got an inner shadow going on here, which is just giving it some more depth, it looks like. I've got a stroke up here to separate that a little bit more from the drop shadows and the background. And the drop shadows here it's a classic drop shadow. We got one that's pretty heavy and solid, which is sort of acting like an offset stroke around the bottom and left edges of the type here. And you can do that, by the way, by turning the spread all the way up, and that's going to remove any softness from the drop shadow. And then right below that, I have a normal drop shadow that's pretty soft, just distance a bit from the original text, again, giving it some more depth. So that's what I did for the type lockup. Then up here, I have a processing group, which turns it back into this. Okay, so I do have the invert adjustment layer here. So here we go. I inverted it, and then I wanted the original colors back. So it looks like I turned the just hue all the way to the end, which I guess is just an invert of the color to get the original color back, which none of this is making sense, but you know, just follow me here. And then right on top of that, I have another hue and saturation that I think is just doing a small adjustment to the reds here. But yeah, so we're pretty much 90% of the way there now. Then right on top of this, I have some more processing layers and texture, actually quite a bit. So let me go through that. It's just tightening up the entire design and adding some more body to those colors and just creating a nicer outline around the whole graphic. I'm gonna go through these one by one. We have these levels here that's just making it a little bit brighter. And I added these 2 gradient maps, which is, it looks like it's just dialing in those colors a bit more, getting the yellow back and the reds a little brighter. And I have this color adjustment group that is just sort of adding, oh my God, there's a lot of layers in here. Oh, Jesus. Okay, but it's clearly, it's not even doing that much, but I don't know why I needed that many layers. But yeah, it's just pretty much adding some saturation and dialing down those highlights a little bit, or putting more color in those highlights. Listen, I do not know which adjustment out of all these is doing the bulk of the work here. This one's doing nothing. This one's doing almost nothing. This one's doing almost nothing. Selective colors sort of just making it brighter, it looks like. And then this hue and saturation, I don't know. Look, I'm just turning the saturation up a little bit, especially in those highlights, okay? Then we got the threshold and levels up here, and this is important. I actually don't know if I use this in the official, like, final submitted design. I'm not sure, but I do think it looks good anyway. I just have this threshold up here, which is tightening up everything, and I have that set to darken, by the way. So it's only pretty much isolating what the black parts of the threshold would be, so it's not actually gonna affect the colors or any of the graphic. Obviously, if I had this set to normal, it would do what threshold does, which is turn everything black and white. But if I wanna just isolate where that threshold is hitting on the black, I could just set this to darken, and I do that all the time. That's a great little technique. Then I have a levels here, which is doing nothing. All right, what am I doing here? So this is the final design. I actually had this group up here, which turned it into an alternate version of the design that I really liked. This was the version of the design that I liked better, and I was surprised that the other one got through instead of this. So pretty much what this one is doing is just thresholding it normally and then adding that yellow color on top. And I like that better than this, but obviously that wasn't the one that got through. This one was the one that made it through. I like both, but I don't know. I just thought this one, it made more sense to me. Maybe I'm just a fan of one color grungy graphics. I don't know, but that is how I did this design. Okay, let's check out these last 2 designs here, which I won't harp on too long because I actually did a tutorial on not these designs exactly, but pretty much the process of creating a design just like both of these. And those are both way back on my channel. It is actually the one I just mentioned before. So for this one, it was the Angelic Grunge tutorial. And for this one, it was I believe I was recreating a vintage merch graphic, and they both use these same techniques from those tutorials. So if that's not a testament to YouTube University, I don't know what is. So let's go over this one first, because this one's really quick. Again, this was just that tutorial that I did. So again, I started off with that same exact concept of the previous one, where I have the logo with a ton of drop shadows on it to give it that glowy effect. And this time I also added the Nirvana logo right on top of the Smiley, which before it was on the bottom, now it's on top. So these are pretty similar designs, and they start off the same way. And I used that similar technique that I used last time, which I again previewed in that tutorial that I did a while back, which is just where you add a bunch of textures set to overlay or just various blend modes right on top of the logo or text that have that drop shadow, and it just really ingrains it with a cool grungy feel. Let's check out some of the textures that I have on here. And again, this is inverted right now. I'm not sure why I did this for both designs, where I started off with it the other color or the other way, and then I inverted it later on. I don't know. But yeah, this is just a bunch of textures set to various blend modes on top of here. And I also have, and this is very important, a photocopy / noise texture all the way on top here, set to overlay. So I'm gonna turn all these on, I'm gonna turn that off. We're getting a lot less of that fine grainy detail with it off. So I love having, and I highly recommend, and I do this in that tutorial where I have a photocopy or noise texture set to overlay on top of the whole thing to give it that really fine granular grunge. And then, like I said, I just have a ton of random grunge textures here. So I started off with this one set to overlay. I got all of these from either, I think, Google or Texture Fabric. I'm 90% sure this one right here is from Texture Fabric, which is a great resource for free textures. So go check out, I think it's texturefabric.com, and that's fabric with a K, not a C. So I have this one set to overlay. Right on top of that, I think it's the same texture set to soft light. And then I have this random texture, which is definitely from Google. I'll set that to normal so you can see. This is, or maybe this is from Texture Fabric. Either way, I have this one set to, I believe it was linear light, and I just masked that in to a few different parts of the graphic here. And then I have these really cool textures, which I have no idea where I got them from because they look a little too low quality to be from Texture Fabric. So they could be maybe something I sourced a while ago from archive.org, which is something I used to do. So I'm not exactly sure where these are from, but they're really awesome because they have this, I don't know what language that is, what character set this is. Maybe it's Greek or Russian, I don't know. But it looks really cool. It's like these architectural sort of ghost print, this type in here that really added a nice edge and sort of mystic feel to this design. So I have both of these set to screen, and I just overlaid them on different parts of this graphic. And of course I have this photocopied noise texture on top. And then I did the color for this, which was, it looks like I just inverted it. I guess that's what I did. I did it with a gradient map. So I had this is a pretty simple gradient map, 3 points. So I just had this blue as the midtone, and then I have this yellow coming through as well, which is through a color fill layer right on top. So this was just the gradient map, which looked pretty cool. But to give it more of a warm feel, I added this yellow color fill on top and set that to multiply so it would affect mostly the whites of this graphic, which I thought looked really cool. So that's the breakdown for this design. It's really simple, very similar to the last one. Let's check out the final design here. This gorgeous in Utero design that I really love, and I didn't think it was going to get approved because this one was probably one of the last ones to get approved, but I really love this one. So let me take you through it layer by layer real quick. I'm gonna turn all of this off. Again, I started out with the In Utero album cover where I selected out the subject. And in this group here, essentially what I did is just duplicate it a ton of times. And with each successive duplicate, I just made it smaller and dragged it a little bit back in perspective. So it was kind of growing into the main subject. And for each of them, I added a stroke and a different color, which I'm gonna threshold later, which is why it looks like crap right now. But yeah, so this is just a ton of duplicates of the In Utero subject. And on the top one here, I added a threshold on that, and I add some more of a threshold later. And then on this whole group, I added another stroke to get this outline over on top of all the duplicates at once, and this drop shadow, which is pretty much just doing the job of a stroke but kind of offset downwards a little bit, which gives it a little more weight and depth, which I really like doing. And then on top of all that, I have this noise layer and a threshold layer, which if you watch like any of my videos, you already know this technique, where I have the noise layer set to overlay, and this is a noise pattern from my Vintone template, and I have that set to overlay, and then I have a threshold right on top of that, which is turning everything black and white, obviously. And was the reason I had those colors earlier is because they're pretty much successively getting darker and darker. So when I turn that threshold on, it's sort of giving that gradient feel from the last duplicate to the main subject. And then I just did that again with the logo. So I have the same thing going on with the text here, exact same process. I just duplicated the logo a bunch of times and scaled it down and moved it back successively to give this perspective effect. And then obviously that text is sort of hiding behind the subject here. So later on, I actually add that logo back and really big in front of the subject. And then it was just a job of coloring. So this is what these groups are for. So let's go over the text first. I just have a color fill layer masked to just the selection of all of the duplicates. And then I added that sort of gradient pinkish red here coming from the back. I believe what I did was just paint in with a soft brush where I want that gradient. So if I were to do this again, I would paint in with a soft brush. It would have to be within that selection. So I just paint that in with a soft brush here. And it looks like what I did was use my dither tone action set to dither that, so it had that grainy look to it as well, and that would also make it more suitable for print. So you can use the dither tone action set, which is now outdated, or you can use my dither tone plugin, which I highly recommend. It is probably the best plugin I've ever used, the best thing I've ever made, and it also has the feature to dither a layer mask. So let me just show you real quick, is when I select this layer mask, I'm able to just click render on this, and now that's going to automatically dither that, but I want that affecting the layer mask. So I have this mask button here, which affects only the layer mask. So now we're seeing that dither effect being applied to just the layer mask. And if I want, I could change these settings here to make those dots bigger or make them smaller. I'm also able to adjust the levels or the brightness of that layer mask. And then I just click save here. And then once I click save, you can see in that layer mask, it is now completely dithered and it's got that stippled, grainy look to it. And that also makes it suitable for screen print. And then it's just the same thing with the subject up here. I have the colors done here as well. There's a little bit more going on here since I have the subject a different color from the duplicates. So I have a mask just for that main subject here, which is set to yellow. And then I have the same thing going on where I have the duplicate set to this blue, and I add that gradient coming in, that hot pink, which is sort of fading up here. And again, that's also dithered with dither tones. Super useful, especially when you're dealing with a design that's going to be going to print, screen print in particular. So yeah, that's pretty much the design. And then on top of all this, I just added a colorful layer set to lighten, which is just affecting those black parts of the design. And I ended up tweaking the colors quite a bit, and I ended up here, which was the final design. This is one of my favorites, and I have this tee as well. I'm gonna show that to you right here, except I actually bought it and I did not read the size chart. They sold this as like a baby tee for women, and so I did get a large. I should have got like, I don't even know if they had a double XL, but this just does not fit me at all. It maybe reaches my belly button, and I'm a pretty large man, so I don't know what I could do with this shirt besides display it. But they did a great job on the print, so I gotta give them kudos for that. The design came out great, and like I said, this is one of my favorite designs that I did. All right, and that is how I designed official merch for Nirvana. Absolute dream client, bucket list project. Like I said, I did 20 designs for them, and about 8 of those got approved, so there's definitely more to show. If you want me to make another one of these videos where I break down some of the other designs, or maybe preview some of the ones that didn't get through that I really liked, please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate every single one of you. As of this recording, I'm about 900 subscribers short of 100K. So please be sure to hit subscribe if you like this video and if you want to see more videos just like this. I just cannot believe how much this channel has grown. I never expected to be here. So I'm just really thankful for all of you for supporting me. I really can't show my appreciation enough, but I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out.